We have heard what research has said, we have heard the stories from the students. Now we are going to start with the students giving us their ask. And I think for our deans, this is the most important part, to say what is the ask from the students. We have our partners, we are probably going to hear from them. How do they view, how do they contextualize the ask from the students into the work that they are doing, using the influence that they have and the priorities that they have towards eliminating sexual harassment in our universities. So I will start with Vanessa Amidu. I will give you 3 minutes, 2 minutes to present us with the asks.
So when it comes to students, we should note that what students particularly want is an environment where they feel safe, where they are obliged that if they give out their plea or their cry, then they are not going to be victimized or have follow-ups or feel like they're no longer safe on campus. So most of the times, we have to understand that sexual harassment is something that is happening. So the key ask I'm going to look at right now is key ask number 4. I'll look at the last one. Why? Because it involves all students at most. So universities, as one of my colleagues says, universities cannot accommodate all students. So at the end of the day, we have more concentration being focused on the students who are on campus, and then those who are off campus, like the ones who oblige in, who end up in semester marriages and so on, because they cannot afford to pay for their accommodation, or they basically choose to live with their boyfriends. So most of the times you'd realize that even students who are off campus and on attachment, when they face sexual harassment on attachment, they do not know who exactly to report to. Even if they do and they decide to inform external forces such as the police, they feel safer if they report close to home, which is their universities. So universities should have policies for students on attachment, that when they bring cases of sexual harassment, how does the university go about that case and make sure that the student is not victimized, whether they're a girl or they're a boy, depending on the sexual harassment that they're facing. And because sexual harassment has different stages, when it starts from even a comment, it goes towards describing someone's body to the extent of touching. So we need to be clear on that, because students, when they do not know what is sexual harassment, they'll basically do anything for favors, especially in this economic situation where they are forced to particularly involve themselves in carpet interviews, in taking unnecessary flirting comments from the professional level, and even when they're on campus. So that one is really a cause for concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. The Embassy of Sweden is the one funding this particular event. And I know they've put a lot of resources, both technical and financial, in pushing for women's rights in Zimbabwe. Sweden is one of the countries that is regarded as very progressive in terms of ensuring women's rights are protected, promoted, and respected at all levels. Just to say, after hearing the asks of the students, the stories of the students, what probably can be the learning points between the Embassy of Sweden and Sweden as a country, some kind of partnership where we can borrow or learn from your experience programming in Zimbabwe, and also how Zimbabwean Institute of Higher Learning can learn from Institute of Higher Learning in Sweden.
The Swedish Embassy in Sweden is very much engaged in those issues, but I would very much like to thank the students and the university and the dean for hosting us today, and I definitely think that the first step is, of course, to talk about those issues and to speak out and to denounce unacceptable behavior. And hearing from Bisho some of the numbers of the situation when it comes to sexual harassment in universities in Zimbabwe, it's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed, and that if we as Sweden can be helpful, I definitely will do my utmost to help out as much as I can. As we mentioned, we are working with Say What in order to raise the issue and to encourage people to speak out. But I think what's also been mentioning in terms of clear policies and places to report in order to make sure that the students that are harassed both feel comfortable in speaking out about the issue, but also that there is an accessibility of services, that there are points of entry within the universities for students living at campus, but also, as we heard, the issue of students who are not living on campus, that there is this, that every student should know where they can turn to. I think that is possibly a lesson from the universities in Sweden, that every student should feel that they have the right to report, but also they should know where to go in order to report. That's very much the starting point. And I would like to again thank the students and the accounts that we have heard about the situation that I have to say is quite deplorable, and let's see how we can together address it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think the message is clear to say the process of talking about sexual harassment has started, but it doesn't stop with talk. It has to move to action. It has to move to accruing to benefits in ensuring that our male and female students are safe on and off campus. Teams of students take note. I think there's a great possibility of partnerships. I'll open the floor. I'll move on to the Ambassador of Canada, His Excellency Rene Cromones, just to give us perspectives. And know you have been active in terms of the He for She campaign, the role of men in terms of working with women, working with girls, working with female students in challenging sexual harassment, gender-based violence. What are the opportunities? After hearing the asks, after hearing the stories of the students, what are the opportunities probably for partnership involving men in the broader fight against gender-based violence?
One thing I think is important to start with is to note that as I sit up here representing a country, it's not to say that Canada has found a solution to the problem, or that this is somehow a uniquely African or a Zimbabwean problem. Canada may be a place where, as in Sweden, some of these mechanisms and the policies are in place, but we still struggle with some of the things that the students raised themselves, or that Bishal talked about. And social norms is one of them. I still find that the kinds of things that were being reflected here in terms of what boys understand about girls and sexual reproductive health rights is very low, and it tends to feed into what one of the student representatives talked about, is people becoming perpetrators because they believe a man is supposed to behave in a particular way. And that's something that I think as a solution needs to get tackled here in Canada and elsewhere. You need to understand what it means to be a man, and not in a traditional sense that it seems that the more number of women you can have sex with doesn't make you a better man. The more number of people you can have power over or influence over doesn't make you a better man. These are norms that we have to fight, and I find them here in Zimbabwe, but they also exist in Canada. And as a man and as a He for She champion, and myself, Bishal mentioned it as well, I think having those conversations with men and making sure that the young men understand that being empathetic and being able to understand what women are going through and being able to stand up for them actually makes them better men, makes them actually stronger, and is a sense of masculinity that is important for them to take in for their lives in university, and then when they take it out into their communities, because their communities will be better, their marriages will be better, their families will be better, the societies will be stronger if they adopt that view of the relationship with women and support women going forward.
Gender-based violence, sexual harassment is not a women's issue. It's a community issue. It's our issue as Zimbabweans, all of us, men and women. My next presenter will be from UNFPA. We know that there is a big program, the Spotlight. Some of you have already heard about it. It's a big program being rolled out in Zimbabwe in terms of responding to eliminating gender-based violence, including sexual harassment, and pushing for women's rights. We have the university stories now. You have heard it. Where are the opportunities?
Thank you very much for inviting us to be part of this. And we've always been part of young people. And we really appreciate the efforts by the donors like Sweden Canada, Irish Aid, who have been helping us to work with you as students and as in educational institutions. I'll just not jump into it immediately on Spotlight, but I think what we've heard this morning is a reality. I don't think it was just a skit, it was what is happening. And the figures that we saw UNESCO presenting are not fictitious, they're real figures. And it's a big, big problem. And it is for this reason, as a UN, we're looking at how can we ensure that we help institutions, we help governments invest more in this group of young people. When you come to university, you're somewhere halfway between being a child and being an adult. And it's a phase that we go through, all of us, and it's a scaring phase because you're expected to act like an adult, but at the same time you're dependent like a child on other people. And that brings me to the part of where is Spotlight putting the spotlight? We are putting the spotlight on gender-based violence, which includes sexual exploitation and abuse, and sexual and reproductive health and rights. Because when we go through what some people tell us, you realize that it's really violating their rights. And it is for this reason, Spotlight is not a new project. It is building on what all the different UN agencies are doing. And that's why we build on information like what Patricia presented. We use information to work with appropriate target groups who include the universities and tertiary educational institutions. And it is for this reason that what's really coming out from the ask is, who are you asking? We are asking, one, you come in, you are in the custody of the university. And therefore the university as a whole, the administration, starting from the highest level, has a big responsibility. Because as a tertiary institution, you are telling parents or guardians, we are taking custody of your children to help them become responsible adults. And therefore, all the stories we are hearing about semester husbands, I had never heard about it. I think it's the first time I've heard a name given to it. It doesn't happen just in Zimbabwe. It's happening all over. We as a UN, as part of prevention of sexual exploitation, abuse and gender-based violence, are going to work with various partners, especially the tertiary institutions, now that you pointed out, to look at how can we work upstream at the policy level, to look at can we then work with the tertiary institution administration to make sure that there are favorable policies that allow an environment that ensures the protection of both girls and boys while in their learning institutions. I think that's one area. Two, as part of programming, is to look at how to work with the students. So there's responsibility of the administration, but there's also responsibility of the students, and looking at how best can we better prepare students. You know, if you want a car to run well, you have to make sure it's in good condition all the time. And if we want young people to be productive, we have to make sure they are in good condition, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And therefore looking at what programs are going on and how best to build on them from lessons learned, both from here and other countries, because you realize the studies are covering other countries in the region. A very simple example, talking about off-campus responsibility. The university administration is like, that's not my business. Where they stay is their business. Whereas I know in some countries in Africa, I'm not talking about Europe or the US, in Africa what they have done is ensure there's outside accommodation but supervised outside off-campus accommodation, where the university is actually responsible for what's going on. So they are off-campus, but they're still sort of monitored. So we need to look at models of what other people are doing and come in with innovations that will suit Zimbabwe. Finally, I think the other part the spotlight is touching. We've mentioned about data. Patricia gave you an example of how we are going to use data and information to continue to enhance and scale up our work with you. The other part that's very critical is service delivery. Somebody said something about the university clinic is only open between 8 to 4 p.m. and yet maybe that's the time, not maybe, but that's the time you're in class. So there are simple things that need no financial resources. They just need us to sit down, and as a UN, we are ready, and we will come forward and see how we can work with administration, the students, and the final part, which was mentioned, the third prong, is the family. And this is where we look at how do we bridge between the community and the society that our students are coming from, the homes that they will go back to, and the university administration. So the relationship between the communities and the students, more so at family level, looking at parent-child communication, how this can be strengthened to address. So it may not be we will answer all your ask, but through Spotlight, the wider UN, we all have come in with different knowledge and skills. We will come in and work together with administration and the students.
The Spotlight also is being cast on universities and institutions of higher learning. Thank you for that. The UN family is ready to come and partner and support. We are now we're now going to have Msasa project, the executive director, just probably to give us possibilities of partnership in terms of external support for survivors. I think that's an important area where there was a recommendation that there should be internal and external processes. What can be the possible opportunities for partnership for survivors of sexual harassment to be supported outside by partners here in Zimbabwe?
Yes, Musasa provides direct services to survivors, and we are ready to do that. We have shelters across the country. We also have 24-hour, unlike the university clinic, we have a 24-hour call line that students can utilize. We also provide psychosocial support, but I want to say critically, Musasa can provide a voice to students. I know there are times when they are afraid, they do not know where to turn to, they are not aware of their rights. Musasa is there to provide that, and critically to provide the voice when students are fearful to hold their universities and their lecturers to account. But I also wanted to say, Musasa can also provide an outlet for naming and shaming. We are not afraid of them. There are men that were violating students, even as some of us were in this institution, and they're higher up there because no one brought them to account. We know them, they are holding positions of power, and the question is always, why are universities protecting some of these men? Because even those that are in leadership are also not clean. And so as Musasa, we will not be afraid to name and shame and to provide a voice to students. But I think critically also it is about lobbying for not just having the laws in place, but ensuring that those laws are implemented. As a country, we are very good at putting in legislation. When people make noise, you get the law. But it's not resourced, it's not implemented, and I'm surprised we are still talking about universities not having policies. And the question is, who's benefiting from not having those policies. It is the men, it is the men in universities, it is the men holding positions of power in universities who can simply actually have that law, but are not doing so because they do not want to be held accountable. So issues of accountability from students right up to the highest level of tertiary institutions is something that also as MUSASA we can take up. We provide, like I said, the direct services, but we can also facilitate creating of safe spaces for students to be able to talk about their stories. I remember the first time I went to the university clinic and I had a thrush. And the first question I was asked, who did you sleep with? How many men did you sleep with? Have they been treated? It was my first time to go to that clinic as a university student. Those spaces are not safe for students. And a lot of them are manned by old women who do not understand young women's issues. And I think we need to change, to make them safe for young people to use them. So I think there are young nurses around, there are young counselors around. Why do we still have old women who only think when you have a thrush, you have slept with a man? I think we need a change even in our staffing. To make them safe, to make, you can open them for 24 hours. As long as we have those women and those men in those positions, they will not come. So we need to have people that are friendly, that understand the new dynamics that are there to be manning some of those services, and we can support in terms of that. And finally, we need to document women's stories. We need to document young people's stories with sexual violence. Because for us to facilitate advocacy, we need to actually know what's happening. Let's break the culture of fear. Let's break the culture of stigma, because a lot of times you're actually blamed for what happens to you. And when we give space for talking, give space for documenting those stories, it's easier for us to facilitate advocacy. And indeed, as MUSASA, we are on standby to provide a voice. And critically, just as I conclude the issue that was raised, indeed we did a research, and there were critical recommendations in that research, which we still have as MUSASA, that we are prepared to take up. I think things just changed a bit, but there were indeed critical recommendations for working with all the tertiary institutions in Zimbabwe, and we can follow that through. Thank you.
Young people say anything for us without us is against us. That's their mantra. And I could hear from the ululation and jubilation when there was talk of old women. I don't want to make anyone unemployed. But yeah, we still have space, and the solution is we want the rightful skills of youth friendliness to be there in all the spaces so that our young people are safe. Dr. Dean Makado, to just share perspectives from a solution kind of route. How best do we move forward as universities?
I was reflecting when issues of policies were being cited, the importance of policies. Yes, it is important to have policies. But I was also reflecting that we have laws, and yet the jails are still bursting with criminals. So we need to go beyond policies. Yes, policies, and most universities now have sexual harassment policies, and but the sexual harassment is still going on. So you begin to wonder what is happening. I was listening closely to the research findings of UNESCO, because the university which was started, one of the universities which was started was mine, Pindora University. So I was saying, okay, although I didn't remember when they undertook this research. Yes. Now, one aspect which we need to emphasize is the issue of values. Because the values guide our behavior. Yes, we can have policies, but still people will still behave in funny ways. There are 3 levels of discipline. There's what we call compliance. Compliance, you do something good because you fear people, but once you are away from people, you go back to your old behavior. That's not good enough. The next level is what we call identification. Identification, you behave according to the people you admire, like peers. But the danger at this level is you can follow those who are those who are directionless, those who don't have direction. The highest level of discipline is what we call rationalization, where somebody does something out of the full conviction that that is the right thing to do. If we can have that right level of understanding in our students and in our members of staff, we will have no cases, such rampant cases of sexual harassment. So I want to echo what my colleague said, that we need to intensify education, especially to our members of staff who may not have training in social issues, ethical issues. You get an engineer. So again, we need to address that aspect. Some professional grooming to our members of staff in universities. Some universities have it, basic course in teaching in universities. Then, secondly, we need to be innovative in the way we look at the issues of sexual harassment. Yes, as I've said, policies are there, but we still have people perpetrating sexual harassment. One of the innovative approaches is engagement, of wider engagement. Thinking without the box, as some people have said. Not thinking. If you think with the box, outside the box, you assume the box is there. So, at Bindura University, we have seen it working very well. We have engaged parents. You know, when we talked about parents in university, some were saying, oh, you are saying, are you in high school? But what is happening is that the ages of students coming into university, they're getting younger and younger, 19 to 22. And some of them are not prepared to respond to the psychosocial pressures which arise in universities. So we need an engagement, and it has worked. When you see that the parents have their expectations and they also partner in ensuring that issues of morality are addressed in their children, in their sons and daughters, it works. And we also, the issue of cascading, especially the counseling skills. You have heard that the majority of our students are non-resident. In fact, Bindura, it's not only Bindura, we visited Howard University in the States. Most of them, such universities like NAST, we don't have many beds on campus. We depend on non-residential accommodation, where our students are exposed to the vices of society, vices of community. That's where the posters are, the drug posters, and there are people with all sorts of behaviors out there. We need to empower our homeowners, the landlords, with some counseling skills, so that we know we rest in the comfort of the knowledge that our students are in the hands of people who are acting in loco parentis. Of course, the students have an obligation. No, we should not assume that they are just young people. They are growing into adulthood. So they also need to have a part, to play a part, being assertive, being confident on what they want. Again, reaching that level of rationalization. I know St. Lisa is about to say, you are preaching. But it is important, and also to empower our homeowners with basic counseling skills, psychosocial skills. And also somebody cited that these non-residential accommodation facilities need to be monitored. Yes, it is true. From our experience, I'm happy many of our universities have now instituted that strategy where they've employed people who monitor what is happening in boarding houses outside the university campuses. It pays because you discover a lot of things. And also students have a reporting point, like one of the excellencies have cited, that they need to know where to report or where to put across their issues. It helps where you get some people monitoring, officers monitoring what happens to our students outside campus. We have such a strategy at, I know University of Technology, I know MSU, and us, we have appointed people who monitor what happens to students outside campus. But in short, Tendisa, it is important to be multifaceted other than policies. We can have policies, but we'll still have perpetrators. People need to be guided by values, and there's need for more education on what constitutes sexual harassment. I rest my case.